We are 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast, part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Al Sacco, along with Brian Renick. And Brian, this is the last week that we've talked about football without players actually on the field. Training camp is around the corner, dude.
I'm going on the 27th. I'm excited.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So should be
good.
You
going to open practice? You going to open practice or whatever?
Yeah, on the 27th. It's the second open practice. One of my mutuals on Twitter, he's a season ticket holder, David Leakty. He's done some content creation and whatnot, but he lives out in Minnesota. He's a season ticket holder, and so he gets access ahead of time for training camp tickets, and so he just buys the ones that are available and then sells them to people that want them just for face value. So shout out to David. I appreciate that. And I'm excited. I know Aponte will be there, so I get to see Jason and a couple other the guys that we've had on. Jordan will be there. So some of our no huddle guests I'll get to hang out with for a little bit on that day, and I get to see some actual. Well, I'm not going to say actual football, but football related activities, and I'm excited.
That's awesome. That's the one thing about being logistically challenged that it's obviously really tough for me to get out there and do that and, kind of hang out with some of you guys and stuff like that. But one of these days,
I'll say one of these days, we got to make it happen.
I'll get out there. So I do want to say as well, if you're watching this and you see you watch any of our clips, I should say, you'll notice I have on a retro 49ers helmet shirt, which I got from our friends at Homage. That's www.homage.com. They have amazing 49er shirts.
I'm saving mine. I'm saving mine for the 27th. I'm wearing it to open practice, so I'm excited.
Nice. Take a pic and tag them on social media. Yeah,
absolutely.
They've been great. Thanks to them for sending us some shirts.
Yes.
And again, check them out. www.homage.com for some awesome shirts for everything, but definitely cool.
They've got some awesome Ted Lasso shirts on there. Basically any of your favorite sports teams they got on there. Mine are a sneak preview. I got the Christian McCaffrey NFL Blitz shirt. That's the one that I ordered, so I'm excited about that one. But yeah, they've got some really, really cool and interesting things on there. It's a great site. Love it.
So we were going to continue on the show. One of our last shows, anyway, we talked about ESPN is doing a poll with execs, coaches, scouts to rank the NFL's top 10 players at each position. And they went through the offense. So we're going to go through and go over the Niners. We did the defense last week. We'll do the offense today. And then also I want to talk about some blue chip players and what I think blue chip means and how many of them the Niners actually have when we end it. But we'll start with this ranking. And I'm going to start at tight ends, Brian, because that's where ESPN started. And you haven't seen these, right?
I have not. And have they put out the wide receivers, or is that tomorrow?
They did it today.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So yeah, we should be good to go with everything here and go through this. So the tight ends, Travis Kelce comes in at number 1. George Kittle is number 2. Mark Andrews at 3. Dallas Goedert at 4. Darren Waller still at 5, even with injuries lately.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson 6. Kyle Pitts 7. Evan Ingram 8. Pat Freiermuth 9. And Dawson Knox for the Bills comes in at 10. And it's nice to see George Kittle still getting this kind of respect from his peers, from people around the league. And Kittle is still, last season, 60 receptions, 765 yards, a career high 11 touchdowns in 15
That's the big
games.
one for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Kittle only had 20 touchdowns in 5 years coming into last year. So to get 11, that was big for him. And his yards per game was the lowest that it's been since his rookie season. When it was 34 yards, it was just 51 last year. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And we've seen the Niners kind of go away from him at times in the offense. But at the end of the day, he still comes in as the second best tight end. And he still is probably the best blocking tight end in the league, or one of them. And he still is great after the catch, over 7 yards after the catch per reception. He still gets the respect, and he's still number 2 behind Kelce. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think you can really argue those rankings, at least 1, 2 there. I know as 49er fans, we like to think that George Kittle is the better overall tight end. And I think there's an argument to be made there, because really Travis Kelce is a glorified big slot essentially in that offense. But I mean, he's listed as tight end. And so you can't, it's hard to put someone above him when he quite literally is the focal point of an entire offensive system over there in Kansas City, especially now that Tyreek Hill is in Miami. So, and Kelsey's season last year was just incredible in terms of receiving numbers, yards, touchdowns, things of that nature. But yeah, George Kittle, the thing that I think is interesting about that list is to me, it really speaks to what seems like a bit of a, I would say, shallow talent pool for tight ends in the NFL. I think a lot of teams are starting to go away from tight ends more. They're starting to look more for those big slots, like what Kelsey fulfills in Kansas City. But
Maybe
taking
Kincaid
that
in Buffalo now.
yeah, taking that tight end off the field, that traditional Y tight end, if you will, where you're in line next to the tackle. A lot of them are going away from that and doing more of a spread and looking for different body types and different players at that position. And like you said, you said Dalton Kincaid, right? Dalton Kincaid, if you look at what he did at Utah, I mean, again, he's not a blocker at all. I mean, he's willing, but he's not what you would need at the NFL level. I really don't think there are a ton that are like George Kittle, where they're all around, where they are a weapon in the run game as well as the pass game. And while Kittle's receiving numbers are down, those those touchdown numbers were really impressive. So again, I don't think there's really any argument there to be made that there are any players that would be ahead of Kittle or Kelsey. And honestly, I think, again, there's really no argument to be made that it's not Kelsey 1 and Kittle 2.
And the Niners obtained Kittle with a 5th round pick in 2017, Correct. Which is certainly one of their better late round picks in franchise history, and just goes with how well the Niners have done late in drafts, whether it's a Greenlaw, whether it's a Hufanga, George Kittle, DJ Jones. They've done really well, and this was a great pick there for them.
Well, and my hope is that, they drafted 2 tight ends in this last draft. They drafted Cameron Latu in the 3rd round, and they drafted Braden Willis in the 7th round. And I've been banging the table for years now that the 49ers need to get a legitimate second tight end there that can spell Kittle, because Kittle's very important to this offense. And when he's not on the field, the run game suffers, the pass game suffers. I would love to see one or both of those guys really kind of step in and take a little bit of the load off of Kittle's shoulders. They're going to have to beat out Ross Dwelley, which, I mean, maybe that's not going to be a difficult task for them. Charlie Warner, who's been with the team for 4 seasons now, just primarily as a blocking tight end. My hope is that, again, these guys elevate their game above those 2. And I really think that Braden Willis, we had an episode during the summer where you and I were talking about possible surprise contributors from this draft class, and Braden Willis was my pick, and you said that was your pick as well. I think he's going to surprise people. Now, did they draft him as a tight end, or did they draft him as a Kyle Juszczyk replacement? Hard to know, but I think we're going to see him at the very least taking snaps at fullback, because that's a sneaky need for this team, because Juszczyk is under contract for if this isn't the last season, it's just 2 more. So they need to find somebody. And I think Braden Willis played H-back, at Oklahoma, played some snaps there, and is just a sneaky athletic guy that I think could fill that role nicely. So I think the 49ers are in a good place with their tight ends, and obviously to have the second best one in the league is not too shabby.
Running back was up next, and in the NFL, Nick Chubb came in at number 1.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, number 2. Josh Jacobs, number 3. Saquon Barkley, 4. Derrick Henry, 5. Jonathan Taylor, 6. Alvin Kamara at 7. I don't know that he's still
that's
back.
reputation.
That's a little weird. Dalvin Cook at 8. Tony
free
Pollard,
agent Dalvin
9.
Cook.
Free agent, maybe soon be Miami Dolphin. And Austin Eckler, 10. I'm still looking at that Kamara one. That's a weird one to me. But looking at this, I think Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in the NFL. I think there's no doubt about that. He's averaged 5.2 yards per rush best in the NFL and the second best mark in NFL history among players with at least 1,000 rushes behind Jamal Charles. And we went over why I did one of the last shows when I talked about the running back position in the league. I gave Mora Chubb stats. His metrics are terrific. I do not doubt that he is the best pure runner in the NFL. However, if I'm looking at a running back position, what else can they catch passes? The complete package. And when you put all that into it, I might go McCaffrey 1. Certainly nothing wrong at number 2, but I think when you talk about the complete package and you talk about the pass catching ability and what he brings to the offense pass catching wise, I might have gone McCaffrey 1 here. Guess it depends on how you want to look at it. Again, Nick Chubb's phenomenal, but for me, I would go McCaffrey 1.
Yeah, and I think the argument there is who affects the game more, right? Who affects the offensive game plan more?
Sure.
Who are opposing defensive coordinators more frightened to face, Nick Chubb or Christian McCaffrey? And I if you polled defensive coordinators, I would venture to say that the Lions' share of them, if not all of them, would say Christian McCaffrey. And I think one of the things you also have to take into account with Christian McCaffrey is who's calling plays for him, right? Because that definitely increases McCaffrey's I don't want to say it increases his ability, but it increases his impact on the game. Because again, and you saw it late in the season, one of Kyle Shanahan's favorite things to do with Christian McCaffrey, right, is instead of doing play action, you do traditional drop back. He pauses a beat. If there's a rusher coming, he'll chip or he'll block. But if not, he's going out of the backfield on a choice route. And if you've got Christian McCaffrey on a linebacker with a choice route, it's Christian McCaffrey 10 times out of 10. He's getting open. And that's the thing is, again, he affects the game more than Nick Chubb does. Is Nick Chubb a better runner? Absolutely. There's no argument there. But if I were a GM and I was putting together a team and I had the choice between Nick Chubb, who's 27, and Christian McCaffrey, who's 27, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey every time just because of the way that he affects the game. So, I'm not trying to disrespect Nick Chubb. I think he's incredible, but I do think, especially now in San Francisco, I do think Christian McCaffrey is back on top in terms of best running back in the NFL. Not best runner, best running back.
Yeah, total package, like you said. And the Niners traded a second, a third, and 2/4 for him, which is worth it when you're bringing him into a team that's loaded
100%.
like this. And you saw what he did for them when he came. He changed everything. He changed the dynamic. This team is scoring over 30 points a game. They didn't lose until they lost their 4th string quarterback.
And he was the one that came in to throw some passes.
And he had one of the best runs. Ross Tucker was telling me he was on the sideline during that. And he said that touchdown run McCaffrey had the best he's ever seen. So pretty amazing for that. And the trade was totally worth it. Offensive tackles. Number 1, Trent Williams of the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, buddy.
Number 2, Laramie Tunsil. 3 is Tristan Wirfs. 4, Lane Johnson. He of the always false starts.
But for real.
Yeah. Jordan, he's a terrific player. He may get off the second before everybody else, but he's a great player. For the Eagles, Jordan, I'm going to screw up this name. Mailata.
Yep.
Penei Sewell. For the Lions, Andrew Thomas for the Giants is 7. Rashawn Slater comes in at 8. Christian Darrisaw for the Vikings comes in at 9, and Colton Miller at 10 for the Raiders. Now, Trent Williams, Brian, only 6 tackles since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970 have earned multiple first-team All-Pros after 30. It's Walter Jones, Anthony Munoz, Andrew Whitworth, Joe Thomas, Willie Rofe, and Williams. And about 80%, as Trent Williams will be, and about 80% of the voters who did this had Williams first. So again, massive respect for him across the league. He is the best tackle. It was a great trade for the Niners, who traded at the time. It was 2020. They traded a 5th-round pick that year and a 2021 3rd-round selection. Now, they had to pay him big bucks, but it's fine because left tackle is one of the positions you want to pay big money for.
Yeah.
It's been a phenomenal trade and signing for them. And Trent Williams continues to right now defy age and still be the best tackle in the NFL.
I mean, the dude is a freak. Like if we're being just like blunt about it, he is an absolute physical freak in terms of what he can do on the football field for his size, for his age. And it's there's just no argument that he is the best tackle in the NFL. What I think is interesting, by the way, is 2 of the top 4, Lane Johnson and Tristan Wirfs, are right tackles, which is a conversation to be had at a later time. But I think we're starting to get away from you just put your best tackle at left tackle and then figure right tackle out, because right tackle is starting to become just as important as left tackle, because you are starting to see more teams have one like superstar pass rusher, but also a really good one on the other side. And a lot of teams are starting to flip that superstar and have him rush against the right tackle. So, right tackle is no longer the stepbrother of left tackle. And especially if you have a left-handed quarterback like they do in Miami. But yeah, Trent Williams, it's interesting. Somebody posted, I think it was Steph Sanchez, who does a podcast with Jason Aponte called Bully Ball. It's really good if you guys haven't checked it out. But she posted, or she quote tweeted, somebody had posted a photo of Deion Sanders and Jerry Rice standing on the sideline talking to each other, those 94 throwbacks, and said, basically, like, is there anybody on the current 49ers where we could be in awe of, those two sharing the field together? Because it's the greatest wide receiver of all time and arguably the greatest cornerback of all time on the same team together, which is wild. And a lot of people were like, well, no, because those are Hall of Famers and greatest of all time at their position. But I did submit my thought for wow, I can't believe they shared the same field together. And that was, I called it the bear and the silverback, and that was Nick Bosa and Trent Williams. It's quite wild to have the best left tackle in the NFL and the best defensive end in the NFL sharing the field together, practicing against each other, making each other better. I think that's largely why both of them are as good as they are, because iron sharpens iron, right? I know it's a cliche, but that's totally true. And like I said, to be a fan of this team in this moment, to have them both on the same team is pretty exciting.
Interior linemen next up, and I wasn't expecting the Niners to have anyone here. They don't.
No.
Not honorable mention, not also receiving votes, nothing. But the top 10 was Zach Martin for the Cowboys, Joe Tooney for the Kansas City Chiefs, Quentin Nelson, Elgin Jenkins for the Packers, Joe Batonio for Cleveland Browns, Jason Kelsey for the Eagles, Chris Lindstrom for the Falcons, Creed Humphrey, 8 for the Chiefs, Brandon Scherf, 9 for the Jags, Frank Ragnow, 10 for the Lions. And the Niners here, look, they had 3 guys who were basically in the first year of starting in Brendel, Burford, and Aaron Banks. And maybe Banks can maybe who knows, get a. But you know what? The big thing with that group is just that they keep getting better. That Burford can take the next step because he was splitting time last year with Brunskill. And the 3 of them can maybe be the interior for a few years here. That's what you hope. They're not high-end guys. They're not elite guys. They're not blue chip guys. But if they're good enough for the system, great. That's the hope that they can continue to be.
And the 49ers don't, I mean, outside of that Aaron Banks pick, which was actually quite shocking at the time, to be perfectly honest. I think a lot of people were like, wait, what? You drafted a guard in the 2nd round? But for the most part, the 49ers don't tend to just to draft interior offensive linemen. They draft offensive linemen that can plug in anywhere along the line. That's what they look for. And so you get guys like Spencer Burford, who played all along the line at UTSA, and you get Colton McKivitz, who can play tackle, but also can play guard. And you get guys like Nick Zakel, who they're, I think, grooming to play all 5 positions, right? Center, guard, and tackle. So I don't know that if versatility is the hallmark of what you look for in an offensive lineman, I don't know that they'll ever have a holy shit, this guy is incredible interior offensive linemen, just because those guys tend to be, the Quentin Nelsons of the world, right? Who are just absolute maulers, but aren't going to go anywhere but the interior of the line. And the 49ers don't look for that. So, could Burford or Banks develop into one of those guys? Sure. But I don't know that they will. And I also don't know that it is imperative that they do for this team to continue to be successful. If they are as good on the interior as they were last year, they're going to be fine. But you would argue that they should be better because this is the second year now. And Banks and I just lost his name. No,
Burford?
The center.
Brendel.
Thank you. Banks and Brendel played all games last year, and then Burford, like you said, was rotating in and out, but still played a lot. So the fact that they've got their second year together as a unit, I think that's important. And like I said, you should see play similar to last year, if not better. And if that's the case, then we're really cooking with gas. And the only question now becomes right tackle with Colton McKivitz.
Now, for the quarterback position, obviously 2 guys with 9 career starts between them were not going to appear anywhere on this list.
They didn't place on the top 10?
But, still
weird.
How much we talk about the Niners quarterbacks, right? But no, it's still an interesting list to go through. Patrick Mahomes is number 1 and should be with a bullet.
Yes.
I'm trying to see what his percentage was of votes. I don't know if it says it, but I can't imagine anybody.
It's got to be 100. Who's not putting Patrick Mahomes first?
Somebody put Joe Burrow first, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
His highest ranking was 1.
Well, that's the Cincinnati GM.
Josh Allen's highest ranking was 1 too. I don't know. So I guess a few people are
wild.
Patrick Mahomes is in the class by himself. Yeah. And then Joe Burrow at number 2, which sounds good to me. Josh Allen at number 3. Aaron Rodgers came in at number 4, which tells me a lot of people in the league think that he really was hurt last year and that finger really was bothering him.
Yeah.
He's going to come back and be where he was. And I don't know that I disagree with that. They probably will be right about that.
Well, let's face it. Last year he was coming off 2 straight MVPs. So
yeah. I just think he was, a lot of it had to do with injury last year.
Mm-hmm.
Was, your thumb is messed up. It's hard to throw a football.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Herbert's at 5. Jalen Hurts is at 6. Lamar is 7. Trevor Lawrence is 8.
Wow.
That's in whatever order you want to put it. I think that's the top 8. I really do. Dak Prescott, well, I'm starting to think might be a little bit on the overrated side. Comes in at 9. Matthew Stafford at 10. Not based on last year, but if you're, again, assuming he's healthy, I don't disagree with putting him in the top 10. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And then I'll throw some honorable mentions out there just because, again, it's quarterback. It's interesting. Deshaun Watson. I don't know how you can put him anywhere right now.
No.
Kirk Cousins. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff. Okay. Derek Carr. This is the state of the quarterbacks. These guys are, Tua. All those people make sense for honorable mentions. So it's where you are. Other people who receive votes were Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Justin Fields. So you really have right now, assuming where you want to put Matthew Stafford, if you want to say he's done, and you want to say Trevor Lawrence is ascending into 8, but there's really, to me, only surefire 7 guys right now. And it was the first 7 on that list. So the quarterback position, it's mostly all in the AFC. But
yep.
Maybe use some new blood
I still think Kirk belongs in the top 10 just based on performance. I know 49er fans are extremely hard on Kirk. Have you watched any of Netflix's the quarterback?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm on episode 4. It's terrific. And you see a lot of what they go through, the injuries and mental side of it. And yeah, Kirk Cousins, I don't know that you're ever going to win a Super Bowl with him, but you could do a hell of a lot worse than him. And if you told me he was a top 10 quarterback,
I may
not argue it when you really look at all those names.
Yeah. I legitimately think Kyle Shanahan could win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Kyle Shanahan. I think so too. I don't know that. I don't know that anyone else could, but I do think that Kyle Shanahan could. Maybe Sean McVay. I think Kirk Cousins could step in, and I think if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback in 2021 when the Rams went to the Super Bowl, I still think they could have probably won it.
Maybe 2019
Stafford had. Yeah. If Kirk Cousins was the quarterback in San Francisco in 2019, I think they would have won that Super Bowl. Yeah. Like I said, Kirk Cousins gets a hard time, and a lot of it just has to do with his personality. I mean, it's literally, it's like him and Phillip Rivers are just dads playing quarterback, right? Like that's what they are, just like, they even brought it up in that first episode, the shirt that he wore on for the first game. And he's like, my wife dresses me. She picks out all my clothes. I don't want to expend any mental energy thinking about that. I only want to think about football. And that's where it's like that kind of player in the right environment can really succeed. And he has, to a certain extent. His big knock is he does shrink in the spotlight. And would that happen with Kyle Shanahan? Hard to know. I have no idea, but but I do think he is underrated in terms of his actual play, because his actual play is pretty stellar and has been for the past 7 seasons.
Yeah,
I mean, that guy
incredibly durable too.
Yeah, exactly. He takes the field all the time.
Yep.
So there's something to be said about that as well.
All right, so the Niners have represented, I think, fairly so far through this poll. Here's where in the last category, wide receiver, might have some differences of opinion. Let's see. Number 1, Justin Jefferson. Number 2, Devontae Adams. Although can't wait to see what he does with Brian Hoyer and Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Jamar Chase comes in at 3. Tyreek Hill at 4. Cooper Kupp at 5. I don't know. I think my man might be better than that. Number 6 is Stephon Diggs. Number 7, A.J. Brown. Number 8, DK Metcalf. Number 9, Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin is absolutely floundering in
Washington. Yeah,
in Washington. Not. I don't mean like he's not playing well. I mean like he is being wasted in Washington right now. He's incredible.
CeeDee Lamb comes in at 10. So the top 10 is gone through with no 49ers, but the first honorable mention is Deebo Samuel. Other honorable mentions are Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Others receiving votes. Let's see if Brandon Ayuk is here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin. No respect for Brandon Ayuk here.
No.
And Deebo Samuel.
Calvin Ridley's on that list. He didn't even play last year because he was suspended. Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
That is, what are we doing? Like, who voted for us? Somebody voted for him. Somehow.
You know who it was? You know who it was? It was our friend down in Jacksonville. Because he's the one that traded for him. Balky.
Oh, yeah, Trent Balky. You think he was the one,
Yeah.
Got to make that trade look good. Exactly. Looking at this, I didn't expect Deebo to be in the top 10 this year because we talked about it.
Especially
Deebo
after
did
last
not
year.
Have last year, because Deebo did not have a great season last year. 56 catches, 632 yards, only 2 touchdowns. Only for his rushing line. Now I have to find it. I lost it here. Also did not do rushing what he did 2 years ago. 42 carries, 232 yards, only 3 touchdowns. The previous season, he had 14 total touchdowns. He had 1,405 receiving yards and 77 receptions. By his own admission, he did not have a good season. And he was banged up when he was on the field. He really only had 1 or 2 games where he looked the way he did last year. And Brandon Ayuk is an ascending player. He is an ascending player at 1,000 yards last year. And I'm surprised looking at some of the guys who were on there that got votes, I'm surprised he didn't get 1 vote. I think this is the year, I keep saying it, where he steps up into that next level. If he gets enough opportunities, I think he will, where you're talking about Ayuk. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 guy in something like this, but maybe at least getting votes or honorable mention.
I genuinely believe that the 49ers have 2 top 25 wide receivers on this roster, which is pretty impressive, to be perfectly honest. Considering that there are 32 teams in the NFL, I genuinely believe that they do have 2 top 25 wide receivers. I do think that Ayuk is criminally underrated. And I think it's because Deebo gets all of the, kind of all the attention, especially after his 2021 season. But I have a couple. I don't think DK Metcalf is a top 10 wide receiver. I think DK Metcalf is a kind of a one-trick pony. Is he good at it? Absolutely. I'm not taking that away from him. But there are wide receivers that they ranked lower than him that I would take on my team before I took DK Metcalf. So I think he's ranked too high. I think CeeDee Lamb may be ranked a little too high. But other than that, hard to argue that top 10. I do think those are probably 8 of the 10 best wide receivers in the NFL. And then in terms of order, again, you could quibble. You think that Cooper Kupp should be higher. I think Cooper Kupp's issue is a little bit his durability. But I mean, he's listed ahead of Stephon Diggs, which I think is an impressive feat because Stephon Diggs has been incredible in Buffalo. So, but hard to argue. Justin Jefferson 1. I might go Jamar Chase 2, but yeah, it's there's a lot of wide receiving talent in the NFL right now.
So this got me thinking. The Niners had 8 players on this list between offense and defense from ESPN, and so did the Eagles, who I think is maybe fair when you go 1 through whatever. Those 2 maybe have the 2 deepest, best rosters. I think that's fair. They have 8 guys in the top 10 at their position. So it got me thinking, holy shit, how many blue chip players does this team have? So I looked up blue chip, and I'm getting to the point again with Twitter where I have to stop interacting with people again because, oh my God. But just to clarify, for the purpose of this exercise, because I put this on Twitter, a blue chip player, I Googled it because I was thinking position. A blue chip player are those who have proven themselves to be among the best at their positions in their respective sports.
Yeah.
So I thought about how many blue chip guys do the Niners have at their positions. So I'm not saying Kyle Juszczyk is blue chip like Patrick Mahomes is. I'm not saying that. But at their positions, how many blue chip guys do they have? And ESPN just told us from execs, scouts, and their peers that there's 8, according to what they think. So what do I think? I think Bosa is a blue chip guy. It's inarguable. Yes. Fred Warner, inarguable. Those 2 got ranked number 1 on these lists. Yes. Javon Hargrave, he ranked number 5 on this list. I think you can put him as a blue chip player within
100%.
Dre Greenlaw is one that maybe some people were like, why? But again, he's a top 10 linebacker according to his peers and scouts. And we talked about his statistics on the last show.
Yeah.
I think you could say he's a blue chip linebacker right now
Agreed.
For position. Blue chip for his position. Here's one that people were like, oh, well, he's not yet. So, albeit it is a very small sample size, very small. And after this year, we may not be saying this anymore.
Brock Purdy.
But someone who was a first-team All-Pro, a Pro Bowler, and was ranked the 9th best safety by his peers, execs, and scouts. How do you not say he's a blue chip player at his position? He was an All-Pro, so he was a first-team All-Pro.
Right.
So he's of all safeties, so he's at worst top 4 according to last year.
Right.
Will this continue? I don't know. Does he have some issues in coverage sometimes? Sure. But if you're
he did cut down on those last year, and that's where that's why I feel like he is worthy of that, because that was my big concern last year was his mental lapses in coverage, and he cut down on those significantly. And kudos to him, because it made him a much better player.
And I just think, again, it could change, but for right now, again, if that's what the definition is, and you just put those accolades down and covered the name, I think people would be like, well, yeah, of course he is. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then so I don't know. I don't see why that was so controversial. Debo, I'm still putting as a blue chip based on, he was an All-Pro, again, All-Pro.
But that's top 15. Honorable mention, you would say he's top 15 then.
Yeah, and he was the first honorable mention, so I think he was 11. So, there. Trent Williams, again, not even debatable. George Kittle, not even debatable. Christian McCaffrey, not even debatable. The 10th player I had, and I'm sorry there's only 5 fullbacks in the league or whatever it is, but Kyle Juszczyk is the best one. Yeah. And I think if there were 32 fullbacks, Kyle Juszczyk might still be the best.
Be the best one.
He is like a 6-time, 7-time Pro Bowler or whatever it is. And again, I know there's not a lot of fullbacks, but he's terrific at what he does. He's a blue chipper at what he does.
And his skill set allows Kyle Shanahan to do a lot of what he does in the run game and in the pass game. And his ability to stay on the field as a receiving threat, again, makes that offense more multiple than if you had a guy in there that was just in there to block. So, you have to credit him for his skill set and say that there isn't another player in the NFL that would, that would fit in the way that Juszczyk does.
No, I had 3 guys. So I had 10 that I thought had really good arguments, and I have 3 guys that I think are maybe borderline or getting there.
Can I
So
guess them?
yeah,
Can I guess
absolutely.
them? All right.
Yeah.
So I think one of those is Mooney Ward.
Yep.
I think one of them is Eric Armstead.
Yep.
And then I think the other one, based on our conversation, is Brandon Ayuk.
Correct.
Yeah.
So why didn't I put them in there? So with Armstead, again, I've always thought I'm an Eric Armstead guy. He's a terrific player.
Yeah.
I don't think it shows up in the stat sheet. But again, we're talking, is he the 10th, one of the 10, 15 best defensive linemen?
Interior defensive lineman.
Interior? Probably. Maybe. I'd have to go back and look at that list to see who they put ahead of him, because he was an honorable mention, right? I think, if I remember right, on that list. But he's never made a Pro Bowl. He probably should have made it in 2019, but he didn't. He's never been an All-Pro. When you take that into consideration, do you say he's a blue chipper? I think you can. I'm not saying yes or no. I think you can make the argument either way, I think, for him. But he's certainly, I think if someone said to me, hey, Al, I'm going to make the argument that he is, I don't think I'm going to argue with you. I think, I'm not saying, there's no way he's not a blue chipper. But just to go back, so people said Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, Quinnen Williams, Javon Hargrave, Dexter Lawrence, DeForest Buckner, Deron Payne, Cam Hayward, Jonathan Allen were the top 10. Mm-hmm. Honorable mentions were Wilkins, Christian Wilkins, Vita Vea, Kenny Clark, Kenny Clark, Derek Brown, Leonard Williams. Okay. So he was just in the also receiving votes category.
Sure.
So
and I think, again, when you play a position that like interior defensive lineman, where your ability to affect the game doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, it gets to be difficult, right? It gets to be difficult to evaluate when you're trying to rank them. But if you look at the 49ers defense last year with Eric Armstead in the lineup and with him out, there's a considerable uptick in turnovers when Eric Armstead is on the field, because he is collapsing the pocket and causing quarterbacks to make poor decisions. The interception that Dak Prescott threw in that Cowboys playoff game came as a direct result from pressure from Eric Armstead. And I think there were at least 3 other interceptions during the regular season where, if you put the tape on, you can see Armstead collapses the pocket. The quarterback has to get rid of it faster than he wants to, and he throws an interception. That doesn't show up anywhere. That doesn't show up anywhere on a stat sheet. It doesn't show up anywhere. It shows up if you watch the game and you know what you're looking for. And so that's where, is he a blue chip guy? Maybe not, because, again, blue chip guys are special, but I think he's a blue chip part of this 49ers defense. And I think that his absence would be felt pretty significantly if he was no longer a part of this team. And now he gets to team up with Javon Hargrave, like he got to team up with DeForest Buckner. Yeah. And this defensive line, I think, is just going to absolutely kick ass this year. I'm very excited about it.
And Charvarius Ward, he was 20. He got also receiving votes on this. So he was about the 21st from there. And you made some good points about him playing zone. So maybe he didn't get it. I'll let you talk about, because you made some good points about him last show on that.
Yeah, the 49ers play a lot of zone. And, you look at that list, if you go through that list and you start naming off those names, the majority of those names play in schemes that play a lot of man-to-man. And that's where you tend to see the value of a cornerback in man-to-man coverage. You can see that versus what a corner is doing in zone. But the other thing you got to think about is, there's 32 teams in the NFL, which means there are 64 starting cornerbacks. And if you are in if you're in the top 20, that's the top third of the position, which means that, theoretically there's 40 other dudes that you're better than, and really only 19 other guys that are better than you. That seems to be pretty good to me. In terms of effect on the game or whatever. So I do think it'll be interesting. we said this when we talked about him last episode. I do think it'll be interesting to see how Ward does under Steve Wilks, what Wilks can do for Ward's game, what kind of coverages Wilks is going to run. Are we going to see more man-to-man, which Ward has a lot of experience in Kansas City and did incredible. So I'm interested to see what his season looks like this year for sure.
And the last one is Brandon Ayuk. And listen, again, there's nobody higher on Brandon Ayuk than me right now. I keep talking about that. But again, we're talking about the best players at the position, the blue chip guy.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk had 1,000-yard season. It was 1,015 yards. I mean, you can't put him up against guys like Tyreek Hill and about all those guys that got mentioned there in the first 7 or 8. I mean, come on. In last season, now Brandon Ayuk was 28th in targets last year. He finished 22nd in yards total in the league. So did he get a ton of targets? As many targets as Justin Jefferson? No, he probably won't ever in this offense.
Not in this offense.
So 28th in targets, 23rd in receptions, and 22nd in yards. So terrific player. Arrow is pointing up. If he gets enough chances, could he maybe get up into that echelon? I think so, because I'm really high on him. But you can't say off what to me. I think he's getting there. I don't think you could say
he's ascending.
Yep. So I think he's an ascending player who can get there. But a lot of people were like, and again, it's your opinion. I'm not knocking it, but people were like, Ayuk there. I'm like, okay, I see where you're. I think he can get there, but to say he should be there, I don't agree with that right now. Not yet.
Well, and then the other question you got to ask yourself, and again, here's where I think some people can make an argument. If you take Brandon Ayuk off this team, what does the passing offense look like? It probably falters a little bit, right? They don't really have anybody else to fill that role. And again, I asked Jack Hammer and you when we had Jack on, do you feel like, I mean, I don't want to say this is the best group of skill position players that Kyle Shanahan has had since his 2016 Falcons offense that set records. Could we see an offense similar to that in San Francisco this year if either one of the 3 quarterbacks that we don't know who's going to be QB1, but if they can, if they can take the horse by the reins and do what Kyle Shanahan asked them to, man, you've got Ayuk at X, you've got Debo at Z, you've got Kittle, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Juszczyk, you've got Danny Gray, who could be the Taylor Gabriel, right? The deep threat. You've got Third and Juwan, who's your possession receiver. That's your Mohamed Sanu, right? Like all of it fits perfectly with what Kyle Shanahan had in Atlanta in 2016. And I don't know. I think you could see 2 guys that are at 1,000 yards, and that would be Debo and Ayuk. And then, other guys that are between 300 and 500 yards, and Kittle, who may be at like 750 and, maybe double-digit touchdowns again. I do think we are going to see a pretty impressive offense this season, regardless of who plays quarterback, because the skill position talent is just unbelievable and head and shoulders better than any other team in the NFL, in my opinion.
Fun stuff to talk about, fun stuff to debate. Just don't be a dick when you debate it with people would be my
That's right.
Everybody's got their opinions. Everybody sees things differently. Just have fun and debate it.
Yeah, listen, that's a great life motto. that's a life that, you know what, Al, that's a great life motto. Don't be a dick. Hey, just don't be a dick. It's easy.
All right.
Easy.
We're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Later.